Well, welcome, everyone. End of day 2. How's everyone feeling? How is everyone feeling? All right, a little bit better. I'll give you. It's end of day 2, whatever. I need more coffee, too. All right, so I am here to talk to you how about Xamarin is the absolute best way to build cross-platform native applications across any single platform. iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, Tizen, wearables, it doesn't matter. We are here for you. I'm going to give you a one-on-one overview of exactly what Xamarin is, how it works, and how we're enabling you to be more productive than ever with some of the brand new tools, ones that I've been working on, and some amazing new libraries. And at the same time, I'm going to walk you through the day in the life of a developer starting their first application and using our tools built into Visual Studio. Now, if you don't know who I am, I'm James Montemagno. I'm a principal program manager here at Microsoft. I was a customer of Xamarin 7 years ago when I moved to Seattle. I joined Xamarin because I fell in love with it 4 years ago. And when we got acquired by Microsoft, I said, let's do it. I still love this platform, and I love it to this day. Every single moment, because it's the best way to build a single app, 2 apps, or all the apps for every single platform. Now, if you love hearing me talk, I also have a podcast called Merge Conflict and a show called The Xamarin Show on Channel 9, where I talk about Xamarin all the time. I simply love it. So all sorts of good stuff. And I have lots of stickers and stuff over in the podcast area that you can get tomorrow. We ran out today. Now, what's great is that .NET itself is a platform that you can build for absolutely any single platform. Whether it's web, desktop, or mobile, we're able to not only craft native applications, but share code across all of them. This is what I fell in love with as a .NET developer, and when I found I could write Android and iOS apps, it's all I ever wanted to do. Now, when I talk about native applications, I want to make sure that everyone knows what that means and why I fell in love with Xamarin. I think you will too. For me, it's about creating a beautiful native user interface. I want to be able to craft beautiful Android experiences, iOS experience, Windows, and Mac experiences. There's a reason that someone buys an iOS or Android device. They like the hardware, but they love the software. Although I do like iOS or Apple hardware, I don't so much like the operating system. That's why I'm an Android person. But as a developer, crafting UIs are great, but I want access to every single feature in the platform. That's what's really important. If there's something I can do, I want to be able to do it. I shouldn't be limited just because I'm picking cross-platform technology. And additionally, apps have to be super performant and get access to all of those underlying performance enhancements that Apple, Google, and Microsoft are making. Now, the Xamarin unique approach is that we enable you to build a shared C# business logic. This is your models, view models, RESTful service calls, SQL integrations, Azure integrations, things that are just .NET code, because we created an amazing .NET runtime that runs on iOS and Android and Mac, even though it's not up there. Then you have access to all the native APIs and access to native user interfaces. And how it works under the hood is if you're a Windows developer like I was, writing WinForms and WPF apps forever, and some Silverlight apps, we all did it, let's be honest. It was good fun. Is that we had access to .NET, right? This amazing library of goodness, like I/O, Link, XML, Core, things that we know and love as C# and .NET developers. Then if I want to go to ASP.NET, or I want to go to UWP, I download an SDK and get access to platform-specific APIs. With Xamarin as your platform, we extend this, all of that .NET goodness on the bottom in gray, over to iOS and Android. But we create C# bindings around every single API in iOS and in Android. Every single API, all of Google Play services, Android support libraries, everything. So if there's something that an Objective-C, Swift, or Java developer could do, you can do it inside of Visual Studio with C#. More importantly, you can target all the platforms that iOS and Apple and Google and Android target, such as tvOS, watchOS, Wear OS, for instance, anything, and share code across all of them. And since .NET is a unified platform, we can leverage .NET standard libraries to take a single assembly with vast API surface of .NET and share it across all of our applications, whether that's a huge chunk or just a small library. And of course, use our favorite tools, such as Visual Studio for Mac, or Code, or even just the command line. Now, when we go in to start building applications, there's a lot that goes into it. When I started with Xamarin, and what I think is great for a lot of consumer apps that need super high performance and access to every single UI bit, is our Xamarin native traditional UI approach. You create that shared business logic layer, but in this instance, you create iOS storyboards inside of Visual Studio for iOS, Android XML for Android, and XAML for Windows 10 UWP. This means you have access to every single native user interface and access to every single API because you have those 3 projects and a shared code project. Now, for a lot of applications, you want to share even more code. And that's why we created a cross-platform native user interface that we call Xamarin Forms. We said, hey, iOS, Android, Windows, they got some similarities, buttons and images and labels and list views. Let's abstract that into a common library that any developer can bring in and write some XAML or C# to mark up their user interface. The unique part here is that this sits on top of Xamarin to still create native user interfaces for each platform. So even though you create a button, it's still a UI button and an Android widget button and a Windows 10 button on each platform. Now, no matter what approach you pick, you can mix and match. You can easily bring a Xamarin Forms page into a Xamarin app, for instance, or bring in custom controls into your Xamarin Forms app. And this is the model that I fell in love with. I fell in love with both of them, to be honest, because they each have their own use cases. But I did fall in love with the fact that I could write a bulk of my logic. But often we don't talk about this stuff, the purple, the green, and the blue boxes. What is in that stuff? Well, I talked about all of those APIs that we expose. The interesting part that we discovered is just like UI elements, there's a lot of common APIs across iOS, Android, and Windows, such as geolocation, compass, key store, and a lot more. Now, it's nice that I have access to every single API in C#, but iOS, Android, and Windows have vastly different APIs to do this. So a lot of developers take these APIs, create an interface, implement it, do it over and over again. So we said, what if you didn't have to do that? What if you wanted to save settings in your applications and preferences, and you just had an API such as get and set? That's your API for mobile. You don't have to worry about iOS and NS user defaults or shared preferences or app data. We'll take care of that for you. And we created that, and it's a single library that we released this week called Xamarin Essentials. It's over 26 APIs that live inside a single NuGet package to do things such as geolocation, geocoding, key store access, settings, accelerometer, gyroscope, and a lot more. And we're going to continue to expand this because it's all open source, and you can tell us what you want to see in it. So I figured with the time I have left, I would build an entire Compass application for iOS and Android inside of Visual Studio. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm first going to go into our documentation. When you go to docs.microsoft.com, there's Xamarin with the Xamagon. You tap on that, and you're brought directly into our documentation. For getting started, Xamarin Essentials. Boom, there it is. We also have Android, iOS, Mac, and some cross-platform information. We also have 2D cross-platform graphics, game engines, and tons of tools that you can learn about right here. Well, let's look at Xamarin Essentials. I tap on Xamarin Essentials, and inside of here, I have access to documentation for every single API. Accelerometer, battery, clipboard, compass, connectivity, data transfer, device info, email, flashlight, gyroscope, geolocation, magnetometer, which I can't pronounce, opening the browser, phone dialer, screen lock, secure storage, SMS, one single API, and we access the native things for you. So let's look at Compass. I go into Compass, it'll say, hey, you're going to need to bring in the NuGet package. Here's how you use it. There's a start and stop. You get an event. Here's a whole bunch of sample code. Just go ahead and bring that into your app. You're done. We document everything for you. And if you want to go further, you can come down, learn about some API, or go directly to the source code, which we didn't link correctly, apparently, or go to the source code. Got to check those links. And go into Essentials, and everything is open source right here, 100% on GitHub. So let's build this app. I'm going to come into Visual Studio. Now, I created a blank application under File, New Project. And inside of File, New Project, I created a blank Xamarin Forms application for iOS and Android. I just did it to save myself about 30 seconds here. And I'll show you the project structure in the right-hand side. I have a NuGet Xamarin Forms dependency, an app.xaml, and a main page.xaml in my iOS and Android app. And I call it My Compass. And it's important that I have my Android and iOS project because that's where iOS and Android specific things go, or access to Android or iOS specific APIs. So for instance, in the main activity, I can see a whole bunch of information about Android setup and loading my initial app. Now this app isn't anything fancy. It literally just says, welcome to Xamarin Forms. Let's go ahead and bump that up here a little bit. But let's go ahead and bring in Xamarin Essentials. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Browse and type in Xamarin Essentials. Now, I did check pre-release because we just released this into pre-release this week. And if my internet and NuGet is working, which it was 5 seconds ago, let's open a new NuGet. There we go. Now seems to be working. Xamarin.essentials. There it is. Version 0.6. Now, I'm going to install it into all three of my projects, my .NET Standard and Android and iOS, because in Android and iOS, that's where the actual API lives. So I'm going to hit Install and go ahead and accept whatever we said. I don't know. Never read that, but you should probably read that. So now this is going to install the NuGet package and any dependencies that it may have into my project. Now, for this API, there's no additional setup. So for some Android implementations, you may need to add permissions, and we handle permissions for you. But I've read the docs, and it just said, hey, go do this, no additional setup required. So now, inside my app, I'm going to go into my main page, and for this label, we're just going to go ahead and update it in the code behind. I only got a few minutes, so we'll say label info. And I'm creating a X name, which will expose that in the code behind for me. So on my main page, I'm going to come in here. And I'm going to zoom in, and I can immediately come in and say Xamarin.essentials. And there's every single API that's available to me right inside of this API. So everything is there, and you're probably saying, whoa, look at all those APIs. My app's going to be so big if he's just creating a compass. Don't worry. We have an amazing linker technology that will remove any API from our library that you don't use. So if you use one, that's the only thing that's included inside of your app. It's pretty cool. All right, so what I'm going to do now is come up and just say using Xamarin Essentials. And now, from the docs that I just read, I can say compass.reading changed plus equals and bring in an event. And in this event, I get a compass changed event. So I'll say label info.text. And I'll do some string interpolation, and I'll say heading e.reading.heading magnetic north. So that's what we're exposing in this API. I'll go ahead and close that off, and I'm good. The last thing I need to do, equal sign, thank you very much, is go ahead, paired coding, I love that, compass.start. Now, this is going to take in a sensor speed. So if you're making a game, you can have game or the fastest. This is a user interface application. So I'm going to go into UI and hit OK. That's it. That's literally my app. 3 lines of code to get Compass into my app. I'm going to go ahead and hit Debug on my actual Android application. So I have a real physical Android device that I'm screen mirroring here. And I've gone ahead and made sure everything was calibrated. This is going to go ahead and compile up my Android application fully, and then deploy it onto my Galaxy device. So this will take a few seconds as it redeploys and compiles up. So we'll give it a few seconds here. It's good, right on time, perfect. And as I'm letting that compile and deploy, we can also come back into our Essentials API, and there's a great Getting Started doc, which will tell you exactly what we support today, how to get started, what NuGets you need to install. And here, I can actually note that there is a little bit of Android setup that's needed if permissions are required. Luckily for Compass, no permissions are required. So that's really nifty for this demo that I crafted myself. So we'll go ahead and see starting the Android app into Debug. There we go. And look at that. I have a heading on the screen, and as I rotate my device, it's going to take my accelerometer and my compass and actually update the heading in real time to where I'm pointing immediately inside the application. So with that, I have my compass reading and a few lines of code. Now you're like, whoa, wow, James, updating the label, real impressive. So let's take it a bit further. How about we add some images and rotate it and make it a real compass? So inside my Android and iOS app, I have a bunch of resources. So I've gone ahead and made some beautiful compass artwork that I'm going to drag and drop into both iOS first. And we can see that I have a arrow dot 2x and 3x and a compass. And inside of these drawable folders are a bunch of icons for my Android app. So I have all these folders, and I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop those resources right in to Visual Studio. Now, this is going to associate those as Android-specific resources inside the application, and then Xamarin Forms can go ahead and point at them. So we can see I've actually gone ahead and created different sizes of them for the application. So now I can come back into my XAML. And since I have 5 minutes left, we're going to copy some XAML. I can cheat here a little bit. Paste it in. Nothing crazy. 20 lines of XAML. I have a grid, 2 rows. And the first thing I do is I set a compass image in my background, northeast, southwest. Then I have an arrow, which is pointing here, that I've exposed with image arrow, and label info, which I had previously, just for good measure. So now I can come back into my code behind. And here, I can go ahead and say image arrow. And what's nice is if I type rotate, Xamarin Forms also has native animations built in. So I could animate this over time, rotate to the X, Y, or directly to it. I'm just going to go ahead and set it directly to the rotation, so whatever the heading is. There we go. Now I have images, I have an arrow, a background, and I'm still using the same exact compass API to start and stop this, but update the actual image on the device. So again, now it's compiled once, so it should compile a little bit faster this time, and then deploy over to the device. And at the same time, it is creating my package and removing anything that I don't need. So it's only that one API. So here we go. Deploying. Good. Signing. Signing. Deploying. And what I'll do is make sure that the actual device is here. There we go. Perfect. All right. And as you can see, I am a absolutely beautiful Android or artist here, actually making my compass application work perfect as I rotate around. Now, the reading events are coming in a little bit slower because it is a UI based. And we've gone ahead and we've documented exactly what that means for each application. So as I point north or west here. Now, what's really nice about Xamarin Forms, Xamarin, and Xamarin Essentials is I can put the same exact application in iOS. Notice I did add the resources to iOS. And all I have to do is simply say, set that as my startup project. Now, I do have a MacBook Adorable sitting right here, which I'm connected to over local Wi-Fi. There's my IP address. I'm connected over SSH. Now, what's nice is when I set this up and connected, our new auto Mac provisioning ensured that not only the app could be provisioned, but all of the build tools on my Mac were installed and up to date. So it ensured Xcode was installed, Xamarin, and everything. Now, here's what's really cool. This iOS device is plugged into HDMI. There's no other cables. I'm just doing it to screen mirror. And we've implemented Wi-Fi deploying into Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac. So here I set it as iPhone build, and I see iPhone connected via network. So what I'm able to do is go ahead and deploy the application directly over Wi-Fi to the device, which I've never done on stage here, so we're going to see what happens. And it's going to be fun for everyone involved. And at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Elgato streaming card so we can actually see it here. There we go. Beautiful. That looks good. We don't need it right now, so we'll let it go. So what this is doing is it's taking all of my source code and it's shipping it over to my Mac to fully compile up the application because I want to see it on the hardware so I can get the hardware sensors. And what it's doing is compiling it fully, and then when it's done compiling, it will send all of the bits needed and signed over to my iOS device over Wi-Fi. So this normally takes around 30 to 90 seconds based on how my Wi-Fi is working and how much my MacBook Adorable is doing. It's over here. So we'll give it a few seconds to compile up. But I do want to note that I didn't make any changes into this application for it to work. Additionally, I still have the ability to come in and add additional references, access iOS code, and additional provisioning information that I may need. All right, so it did build. That's good. I totally am connected, I swear. Let's disconnect and reconnect. Just make sure it's doing it. All right, connected. This is the experience, actually. It's starting the connection. This is the one thing I was like, oh, it's so close. I had Wi-Fi issues yesterday, too. So we'll see if it's going to pair and connect on the beautiful Wi-Fi in my last few seconds here. Very interesting that I still picked it up, though. We'll give it a second here. Yeah, question.
Xamarin Essentials preferences, does that take the place of your settings plugin?
That's a good question. I'll ask it very generically. We had the concept of plugins for Xamarin, which are community effort. The nice thing here is that these don't deprecate. They add on to it. I'll talk a little bit about some of my projects. I've replaced almost all of my own plugins with some Xamarin Essentials. So I encourage you to check it out and start replacing. Doesn't mean they're going to go away, as plugins for Xamarin may add additional features that Essentials may not have. For instance, so in-app billing, for instance, which we do have a plugin for that I wrote, probably never in Essentials because it's very complex. So I'm not sure if it's going to deploy or debug because of my Wi-Fi. But what I can show you is that we do have a really cool Xamarin Essentials sample application, which is pretty slick. Which actually shows off every single API inside of here. And it does have a compass, so I can cheat a little bit and actually start it onto the device. And I can actually, well, now that it wants me to calibrate, so that's good. And I can actually see it come in and update that number in real time, even though my Wi-Fi deploy on the beautiful conference Wi-Fi doesn't want to work. And what's nice here is that, yeah, we have preferences. We also have key store access. And you can download this and start checking them all out and integrating them into your own app right now. Let's see if I can get out of here. Oh, it's totally deploying. Oh, my goodness. I'm going to go 3 minutes over because, look, it's happening. Look at that. It's going so fast. Look at it go. Ooh, 50%. So that's literally taking the app bundle, the entire application in debug mode, which is actually quite large, and then sending it over. And at the same time, it also signed my application with our automatic provisioning, which is really cool. So everyone hang in there for 60 seconds. Is anyone after me?
Yes.
Yes. Uh-oh. Oh, my goodness. It's happening. It's all happening. It's verifying. It's doing it. It totally installed on the device. Whoever's after me is so upset right now. It's there. I see it. Usually it just deploys. Go. There it is. Yay! That's real smooth. Awesome. Beautiful. All right. So we get out of here. I'm going to run off a stage. All you got to know is there's awesome stuff that we released that I talked about all here today for Android, iOS, all available in Visual Studio Community Edition. Here's all the links, everything here. Take a snippet of that. If you have any questions, I'll be around for a few minutes. I got to run off to take a podcast recording, but I will be here tomorrow, 8:30 in the morning for a Xamarin and Azure session. Thank you so much and have a great Build 2018.